percentage points, while most other allies are expected to make significantly larger increases? Thank you so much.
Well, let me start by commending Spain, because at the beginning of last year, the Spanish defense spending was about 1.3, 1.4%, and in April I got a call from Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister, saying we will go to the 2%. He did. This is billions and billions extra structurally spent on defense by Spain. It was one of the 4 bigger economies not on 2%. The others were Italy, Belgium and Canada, and then there were some very important allies, but a little bit smaller economies like Slovenia and Luxembourg. They all reached the 2%, including Spain. Spain is deployed all over NATO in forward land forces, in missions. You have a Patriot battery securing the airspace in that part of Europe, Turkey, etc., but also wider, to make sure that we can defend ourselves in every inch of NATO territory. So Spain is really doing what Spain needs to do. And yes, at the NATO summit in The Hague, Spain signed up to the statement. But there was also, you know, the disagreement, the agreement to disagree, that we believe Spain needs to spend 3.5 to get to the capability targets. Spain thinks it can be done on 2.2, and future will tell who is right. I think I am, we will see. But that is not new. That was the summit in The Hague. But what happened last year, really, let me commend Spain for what Spain is doing.
All right, third row on the aisle.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good afternoon, Mr. Rutte. President Trump is calling your organization an organization of cowards. You're not responding to that. Is that your strategy to keep the Americans on board?
Well, let me be clear. As Secretary General, of course, the alliance is very dear to me, otherwise I would not have this role. But as I said before, the United States, under this president, is doing stuff which is quite crucial for the alliance. But then I have to repeat a little bit. It is starting again the dialogue with Russia, breaking that deadlock, getting the peace process going. It is making sure that the whole of the alliance came up to the 2%. I'm again not sure whether we would have reached that at the end of last year without President Trump. And then in The Hague, we agreed on the 5% spending target. And this is doing 2 things. One, it is equalizing with the US. That is taking out this big irritant that the Europeans and the Canadians were spending less than the Americans. A problem basically since Eisenhower. So, hey, it was about time to solve that issue. But more importantly, it is making sure that as an alliance as a whole, we have what it takes and what we need to deliver on the capability targets defense ministers agreed last June in 2025, so that if the Russians or whoever adversary wants to try something against us, we are not only now, yes, now we can defend ourselves, but also longer term we can do that. That's why we need to spend that 3.5% core defense spending, 5% overall. And that is all, yeah, I think also in a large part, and not every European likes me to repeat this, but it is true. Without Trump, I don't think it would have happened.
Okay, we have a few minutes left and more questions than we have time, but let's go to AFP here in the second row.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'm Olivier Beau from AFP. I would like to come back on what you said on Ukraine, that essential equipment continues to flow to Ukraine. But the question is for how long? And we are talking here about missiles interceptors like Patriots. I mean, are you concerned that the stocks might be exhausted very soon if the war in Iran lasts longer? Thank you.
Well, I mean, yes, the flow is continuing. And we also know that in the Middle East and a lot of stockpiles are being used. That's clear. And there was this other issue already, and that is the defense industrial base, that we have to produce more. Your country, France, has some of the most impressive defense industrial companies in Europe, but please ask them to produce more. And the same I could say to colleagues from Germany. Germany, and by the way, Italy, the Netherlands, others have some of the best defense industrial companies in this part of the world, but they need to produce more. Extra production lines, extra shifts, opening new factories. The money is there. There was always the problem, can we have the 10-year safety and security in money supply? Yes, you have it now, because tens, hundreds of billion extra spent on defense, and we know that about 20 to 30% is spent on defense industrial output. So the good news is the flow is continuing, and at the same time we know, even without the campaign now against Iran, that there was the absolute necessity to ramp up our defense industrial production. And this is an issue which Europe has to face with the US, which the US has to face, and collectively, as a transatlantic defense industrial base, we have to face.
Okay, third row on the aisle.
Tamara Nutsubidze, independent media platform from Georgia, Euroscope. Thank you for this opportunity. Secretary General, I read in your report about Georgia that allies also revived NATO's engagement with Georgia in light of the 2024 parliamentary elections. So it is very important for us. Can you tell us more details? What was revised? What was reprioritized, as he is mentioning? And also, NATO not only a military organization, it's also a political organization. So how do you estimate recent developments in Georgia? I mean, these repressive laws against media, NGOs, civil society, opposition leaders are in the prison. So can you tell us more detail? Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, when it comes to Georgia, obviously we coordinate closely with the European Union. When it comes to the relationship between NATO and Georgia, we think there is merit in keeping that relationship going. But of course, we also have to recognize recent developments. And that's why we call upon Georgia to return to the path of a more pro-EU European forward-looking approach, including making sure that all the developments and let's say the whole trajectory Georgia was on in terms of democracy, rule of law, that is continued. And obviously, there are serious worries at the moment. So we have the dialogue, we have the discussion, but we have taken the position that it is better to keep the relationship going and then having that avenue to discuss those issues than to say, hey, we don't like it, we end the relationship altogether.
Lithuanian public broadcaster, third row.
Thank you very much. Milda Velikanskite from Lithuanian Public Broadcaster.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Secretary General, question on Ukraine. You talk about overwhelming support from NATO and that United States are crucial for a peace negotiation. Yesterday from Ukraine, we heard that United States pressure Kyiv to give up Donbas region in exchange for security guarantees from American side. Would you say it would be a fair deal, fair offer, or fair ask from a country who defended itself for more than 4 years to give up territory in exchange of security guarantees? Thank you.
Well, let us first of all agree that all of us want this war to end. That is the United States, European part of NATO, Canada, but also Ukraine. Also, Ukraine wants this war to end, but it has to be a lasting end. And it means that after the war ends, we have to make sure that Ukraine is sovereign, that Ukraine is secure, and we have seen a speeding up of the peace process thanks to President Trump, and I mentioned it already, commanding the US efforts there. But for Ukraine to be not only sovereign, but also secure, key in all of this are the security guarantees. They are absolutely vital. And this is why it was so important that in Paris in January, the United States and the coalition of willing agreed on the security guarantees. Because this prevents Vladimirovich Putin from ever attacking Ukraine again post a long-term ceasefire or preferable a full peace deal. And of course, when it comes to territory, any decisions on territory clearly are for Ukraine to take.
All right, Maria in the third row, Tanea.
Thank you. Good afternoon,
Good
Secretary
afternoon.
General. Maria Vassiliou, Tanea. I would like to go back to the Iranian threat on Europe following the launch of ballistic missiles against Diego Garcia. Could you elaborate a bit more? Because you have repeatedly been saying in the past that Russian missiles can reach European capitals in just a few hours. Is this the case now with Iranian missiles? Are you thinking along these lines these days? And more precisely, following the Iranian missile strikes on Turkey and the drone attacks on British bases in Cyprus, what is your concern? What is NATO's concern now on the security in the Eastern Mediterranean? Thank you.
Well, on your first question, let's be lucid and conscious of the fact that Diego Garcia is 4,000 kilometers away from Iran. So if a missile from Iran is able to reach Diego Garcia, that is a relevant development. And what I was saying before to one of the questions asked, that it means that Iran already had capabilities which are dangerous for allies, but this means they are increasingly dangerous for allies. And you can do the math yourself, 4,000 kilometers. So in that sense, it's clear that where NATO allies collectively, unanimously agreed that two things should not happen. One is Iran having a nuclear capability, and secondly, Iran having its hands on a missile capability of this magnitude, then clearly there is reason to assume that there is an increasingly more dangerous situation for allies. The good news, of course, is that allies are prepared. We can defend ourselves. NATO is a very strong alliance, and you've seen that in Turkey with the 3 missiles heading for Turkey. And let me say to all citizens in NATO territory that our military, under the leadership of the Supreme Allied Commander, they are on this, all of them, to make sure that we have what it takes and what we need to defend every inch of Allied territory.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. That's all we have time for, but very grateful to see you and have a good afternoon.
Have a great afternoon. Yes. Thank you. And see you later. Yeah, at the reception.